Hello friends, I'm Matt, and today we're going to be talking to a psychic medium who's going to answer some of my questions, some of your questions, and we're going to take a look at some behind the scenes, never before seen footage from one of Buzzfeed Unsolved's wildest episodes. AJ, it is wonderful to see you again. Thank you so much for doing this.
Matt, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to do this with you guys.
I've been wanting to get you back on the phone or on some sort of video meeting since we did the investigation of the Hannah Williams house, because I've done a lot of those videos. I've gone with Shane and Ryan on a lot of the unsolved stuff, and that one was by far the wildest, I think, in terms of stuff we experienced. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but we're going to talk about so much more. We have some questions from the audience. We have a lot of questions from me, so I appreciate you opening the window to this world that I am so fascinated by.
I'm really looking forward to answering your questions for all the subscribers and for you guys, but also more importantly, making sure that I give some insight and the right knowledge to you guys.
Can you just tell the audience a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so I'm a psychic medium. So I, don't work with tarot cards, but a psychic medium where I give people an view, a projection, where I help them with certain life issues or blockages in their own personal life. I call that intuitive guidance. I'm also a medium where I connect people who have passed over on the other side. So basically, I have one foot in the physical world, one foot on the other side, and I bridge that connection. So through my work, I bring validation and healing to help people understand that there's still survival after death, basically.
How did you learn that you had, I guess, what would you call an extrasensory ability? Is that what you would say? How did you learn that you were in some way intuitive?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I discovered my intuitive abilities or psychic or mediumship abilities, it was more so through curiosity than anything else. I grew up watching certain television shows, talk shows like Sally, Jessy, Raphael, Jenny Jones, Ricky Lake, Oprah. All these shows featured psychic and mediums on shows. And I was on there like, what a crock of BS. There's no way psychic and mediums can be on television and talking to the dead and knowing certain things about certain people. And I thought, they were planted in the audience and saying like, okay, this person's planted in the audience and you tell them this and this and that, or there was cue cards that they were reading on screen. And I started kind of like going through, books and researching and going through my junior high school of trying to understand this. The mediumship came into play for me when I was maybe freshman in junior high school, where my high school teacher, my art teacher, is a medium and was a medium at the time. And she's the one that came up to me and said like, you have some sort of ability mediumistically. I had no idea, but she just knew instantly that I had some sort of connection to the afterlife or to the paranormal. So I started reading people throughout my high school and started actually giving readings back then and doing house calls for friend parents or aunts and uncles. And for me, I thought, well, maybe I'm guessing the information. Maybe I'm just a good guesser. Maybe I'm just making this stuff all up, in my head. And so more and more practice that I got and more readings I started doing, the more evidential my readings became with names, dates, specific passings, specific locations, understanding certain things. And then things kind of changed from there organically, where, things kind of just blew up from there, to be quite honest.
So you found that you were very, very good at it. And then eventually you were like, oh, I could do this as a living.
Kind of. So after I graduated high school, I ended up going to a JC, here in California, and I wanted to be in law enforcement or I wanted to be a firefighter. So I started taking classes for to be a firefighter, fire science, all these different things. And, one thing kind of just happened within a month later. There was a radio show in LA and it was called Coast 103.5. And they were doing a show called Angels in Waiting. And they actually were maybe about 2 months old. And I was maybe 19 at the time. They were, they were connecting with loved ones. They ran from 7 to midnight and they had different mediums on, I think maybe 3 at the time. And people said, oh, you should go on the show. And I'm like, I wasn't really into that stuff because I was focused on my own career. So at 19, someone submitted an email to the radio station and the producers called my cell number because, again, I did not have a business line, anything. I wasn't even thinking about doing this. And they said, is this AJ? And, I was a little kid, still had a cracked voice or whatever. Right. And talking to them and they go like, oh, can you come in? We heard a lot of great reviews. So they brought me into the studio and I did, I think, 6 readings a day as where they test you. things kind of took off. They said, okay, we'll see you next week. And after that, I ended up landing the show for, I think, like almost 5 years. 5 years I was on the show.
On my list, I did have the question, have you ever questioned these abilities yourself? And it sounds like you have.
You know, I questioned these abilities when I was much younger in life. I think it was because of more religion, skepticism, ego, meaning from other people, of being, you know, mocked upon, saying you're a charlatan, you know, you're scamming people. It wasn't really that I wasn't comfortable with the work, but I was myself. Like, I did not know how I should trust the information, and I wasn't trusting it enough. So when I kind of let go and let God, things kind of happen organically.
What is your relationship to people who want to say, oh, you're full of it? How do you deal with that? Or is that something that you're just well past at this point?
Absolutely. You know, for the skeptics, you know, I'm past it, because my job is not to prove anything or shove my belief or religion down anyone's throat. But if you're open and receptive, that's all that matters. And if you choose to experience a reading with a psychic or a medium, that's up to you. But once you have a personal experience that is amazing, sometimes you have to just say, like, okay, maybe there's something more out there.
Do you think that it helps that you came from the skeptic mindset in terms of like understanding that?
Absolutely. The reason why I strive on evidence is because if I'm sitting in front of you, even if it's like via Zoom or FaceTime, I don't want someone to say, oh, AJ, you have someone in your family that passed with a man that passed with a pain in their chest. That could be anyone in my family. You know what I mean? But if you're specific and saying, I have a lady here that passed away with, you know, pancreatic cancer, and she was born on April, and her name is Julie, you know, all that information is evidence and factual. That's what I strive on, because if I had a reading by an intuitive or psychic, I want them to give me information that's not out there.
I think you're aware that there are people who claim to be psychics and mediums who are and have been confirmed to be scam artists. How do you combat the stereotype of, and the confirmed stereotype, that there are scammers out there?
Absolutely. You know, I always tell people, one, word of mouth, referral. You know, it doesn't matter how much press, how much radio a person has done, that still doesn't make them official. There are people that I've gone to that have done a lot of television, a lot of, you know, radio, a lot of this, and the readings were just mediocre. They were just okay. Anytime you have a psychic that wants you to buy candles, incense, or they want you to come back and they insist you need to come back because there's a black cloud over you, or two, your loved ones are in limbo or something negative, run away, be aware.
So we were both a part of the episode of Unsolved where we investigated Hannah Williams' home.
Yes.
I was a cameraman. You were the psychic medium, as everybody knows. And that was, for me, one of the probably most interesting of the shoots that we've ever been on, because, I mean, we go into a lot of these places and nothing. We get nothing at all. That one seemed to be popping off. Like that was a party in there.
All right, you're gonna make me do it again. I'm gonna turn this off in 5 seconds. And I mean it this time. 5.
The whole time, though, I'm not feeling the energy that producers or Ryan are feeling. I'm walking through those spaces with a lot of paranormal evidence, feeling just like Shane does, where I'm not in danger, I'm not, you know, scared. Is there a possibility that some people have this extrasensory perception and some people are they just don't?
Shane's, you know, perspective, you know, I love his energy because he's definitely kind of like that skeptic and just like mocks the process, has a good time. Ryan's, you know, definitely the full-on believer. He's definitely like, you know, the full-on ghost hunter, and you're truly like Fox Mulder from X-Files. You want to believe, you know.
I do want to believe so bad.
And I kind of mentioned it briefly, is that we're all intuitive. Maybe we're not all mediumistically. We don't have this ability to tap onto that side or maybe into that field. But I feel like in your perspective, I feel like honestly, you're naturally intuitive. But I feel like even with your ability, that sometimes you it's not that even sometimes you just question it because it's who you are. It's just who you do. You're like an Excel sheet. You have to order. If they're not in order, they're not who they are. It's kind of like, oh, it's not happening correctly. So you need to really dissect things and pull things apart to make it a reality for you. And sometimes when he makes it a reality for you, you're like, yeah, but it can't be. So you still question the question that you figure out. I think it's just being open and receptive, and that's all it is. I don't think it makes you a skeptic. I don't think it makes you a true believer, but someone who's just open to the process.
I think that there are enough, like if I were to list out the experiences that I've had on these shoots and just on my own, there's been enough to where someone would go, are you out of your mind? Like, of course, of course this stuff is real.
You know, what I was saying is what's so crazy because, you know, like I did not know where I was going. You know, literally I got the address probably, you know, half hour or wherever before. They just told me drive to this area. We'll give you the street address and all that stuff. So I had no idea where I was going. I did not know if it was a haunted location, a home, or whatever. So when I go there, I immediately felt energy at Hannah's house.
I wasn't aware that they kept you in the dark until you showed up. Is that the case?
Yeah. Most of the time, most productions, when they do that, because I guess they don't want me to, you know, somehow research or the office to research. The way things flowed was just so organically and so beautifully. Not in a negative way, but in a paranormal way.
I didn't know that you were kept in the dark. There was a moment that didn't make it into the episode in which you had zeroed in on me.
There's just walls in between these spaces.
Do you mind if I talk to him?
Yeah.
What's your name again?
Matt?
Is your dad passed?
No.
Is there like a father figure passed over for you, like name like Donald or Don connected here? I feel like there's like a Don. I actually feel like I'm like directed over here. Like I feel like I'm being pulled this way, which is why I'm talking to him.
So in that moment, I was relieved. I was like, oh, okay, he doesn't know anything. He's making it up. He's way off. And it wasn't until a few weeks later when we talked to Hannah that we learned that her husband, whose name is Matt, recently lost his father, whose name was Don or Donald.
You know, what's so interesting about that, and we talk about symbolism and my frame of reference. So the fact that your name was Matt maybe was their way of recognizing like, oh, he's Matt, so it's connected to a Matt or it's connected to him. So they're using my frame of reference to identify there might be a Matt and this and that. And I think I may have even asked you what your name was maybe 2 or 3 times just because I was trying to understand like, really, like it's not for you. So I still just go with the information because I believe if I'm receiving the information, there's a reason why I should give that information to that person, if it's to the camera guy, which was obviously you.
Until this interview with you now, I have always written that off as, oh, he did research.
Well, you know, but here's the thing. I think that's very common for people to think that. I'm glad you're saying that because it's very common to people think, you know, it's all planned, it's all made up, it's all organized, it's all orchestrated, but it wasn't. Like I was truly in the dark, like literally like half hour, 15 minutes. And I was just saying, they just told me drive to this area. So I was in a parking lot, say, we'll text you with the address when we're ready. And so when we got to the address, I didn't know we're showing up. Like I just saw this house. And I'm like, oh, it's a house. I did not know exactly what I was supposed to investigate. They didn't give me any information, what was going on until we actually started rolling on camera. So what everything came through was all organic and how it all happened. So I'm glad that you shared your thoughts and your perspective and putting it out there because I think it will give people a little bit better understanding of how this whole process works.
Here's a question from the audience. Do psychics or mediums work with law enforcement to solve murder cases?
Yes and no. So typically how it all works with me is either I work with the family first and the family will sit with me, then they will give that information to the detective. Sometimes the detective will just kind of put it on the desk as like a tip or something there that wouldn't be really looked into. And other times I'll be reached out by either active or retired police or law enforcement. They are used, but it's not public knowledge very rarely. And you're never going to see like psychic solves a case, FBI used a psychic, like it's never going to happen that way.
Here's a question from the audience. If a psychic tells me my future, can I change it?
Yeah, absolutely. We can change our future because we have that choice of free will. We can do whatever I want.
Someone asks, can someone develop psychic abilities later in life, such as in their 30s, 40s, etc.? My guess would be you can hone in on them that you've already probably might have had access to.
Yeah, absolutely. We all have access to our psychic mediumship abilities. I don't really like to call my work a gift because it's something that I'm always working on. It's an ability and it's something that I'm always learning and working on. It's a craft. I think it's at any time you feel called to do it, you're going to know. So it's part of God's spirit and intuition guiding you. And it's about listening, but you can develop this ability at any age.
Last question. 4 words, Powerball numbers, no tricks.
I wish I could give you the numbers. I wish, you know, that's probably the most funny and common question I get at all my events. Numbers, yeah, they don't come through. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
This was one of the most fascinating conversations I've ever had, and I cannot thank you enough for coming through for this.
Man, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate all the questions, not only from the fans and subscribers, but also from you, because I think it's opened up that other door for people who are believers and non-believers. So thank you for being, allowing me to be on this platform with you.
Big thanks to AJ for visiting us and opening up and sharing his world with us. If you want more of AJ, you can find his links in the description below. As for what I believe, I'm still incredibly torn between science and experience. On one hand, there is no scientific evidence that suggests that psychic powers are real. There just isn't. Perhaps it's just the hope of wanting something more that drives anyone's belief system. But for me, right now, I don't have enough information to say one way or the other. What I do know is that AJ is lovely, and in my experiences, I have seen some weird stuff. So there has to be a way to explain it all, and I definitely just don't know what it is yet.